Hey guys, this is Nick, and this is your Linux, open source and privacy news fix for the first half of September. This time we have GNOME showing off multiple parts of their ongoing redesign process, Manjaro Cinnamon moving to Vivaldi as its default browser, and Valve trying to lower expectations about the Steam Deck's game compatibility situation. Now speaking of situation, today's sponsor can help you get out of a tricky one. Thanks to TuxCare for sponsoring this video. As you might know, CentOS 8 will go end of life this December. This means that your servers won't get any security patches anymore and will basically leave your work environment and all your data in a potentially vulnerable state. Now, you could migrate to a CentOS compatible distro in a hurry, but there's another solution if you need more time. You can extend CentOS's life by 4 more years, thanks to TuxCare Extended Lifecycle Support for CentOS 8. This basically means that all your CentOS 8 devices will still get security patches for all recently discovered vulnerabilities, so you can plan your transition and migration with a little bit more peace of mind. Now, TuxCare has a calculator online to let you figure out the cost of running CentOS without support, or you can click the link in the description below and see how TuxCare can get you a little bit more time to plan your migration securely. Okay, let's start with the Linux news. And GNOME 41 is almost upon us, and the software app is getting a nice redesign, especially on the applications pages. There is now a nice blog post to help app developers get ready for these changes and ensure their app looks as good as possible in the redesigned GNOME store. There is a bunch of metadata developers can add to their app, like a short summary, device compatibility, including with phones, desktops, or if they need a gamepad. But developers can also specify some hardware requirements, like a minimum screen size. Screenshots will get a lot more space on this redesign as well, so developers are encouraged to make these huge and beautiful to entice users to try their apps. Of course, there's also links to the website or the issue tracker, a link for donations, translations, and user documentation, as well as the release notes. All in all, GNOME Software version 41 looks really good on screenshots, and it should make apps shine a lot more. Manjaro Cinnamon Edition decided to replace the Firefox browser with Vivaldi as their default choice. This edition of Manjaro is not an official one. It's supported by the community, so it won't impact other editions, but it's still an interesting move. Vivaldi is a great browser that I like using from time to time, just to see what they've done with it. And its core is open source, based on Chromium. But all the UI code is proprietary. Now personally, I'm more in the camp of use whatever works for you, and the maintainers of Manjaro Cinnamon can do whatever they want with their distro, but it still feels weird to have a non-open source web browser as the default in a Linux distribution. It also keeps reinforcing the Chromium and Blink monopoly, which is definitely not a good thing for the web as a whole, but it seems that this ship has sailed. Linus Torvalds has agreed to add the NTFS driver inside of the next release of the Linux kernel, version 5.15. While Linux already had support for NTFS, it was partial and less than ideal. This new edition is actually Paragon Software's NTFS 3 read-write driver, which should improve support for the Microsoft file system significantly. It, of course, came with some small amount of drama as the developers used the web interface of GitHub for their pull request, which, according to Torvalds, produces garbage merges. A new malware seems to be targeting Linux host. The ChaChi remote access trojan virus is written in Golang and tied to a specific ransomware gang. According to the security firm that discovered this Linux variant, it might be trickier to discover for antivirus programs, as they're not used to look for programs written in Go. Now, this malware will probably target servers, as this is where it could do the most damage, but maybe it's a good time to not install anything from a source you're not certain of and dust off that good old antivirus just in case. GNOME team member Alexander Mikhailenko detailed the changes coming to Advaita, especially regarding the appearance of buttons. GNOME is going the flat route and will remove backgrounds for almost all buttons in header bars. The rationale here is to assume that most one-icon buttons are understandable enough to not require the context of having a button background or shape. This includes buttons that contains icons, or an icon and a label, buttons with a visible arrow for a drop-down, or any split button. Text-only buttons in header bar will receive an icon and lose the background, and action buttons in dialogues will actually keep their backgrounds to make them stand out more. I can't say it doesn't look good on screenshots, but I want to use this new style before I can form an opinion about it and how usable it is. Tuxedo Computers is the latest KDE patron, joining the likes of The Cute Company, SUSE, Google, Blue Systems, Canonical, Enioka, Slimbook or Pine64. It's cool to see Linux hardware manufacturers supporting various desktop environments. According to Tuxedo, they also do development work on their end that can be contributed upstream when needed, and they can pass on customer feedback to KDE to help them improve things. The benefit for KDE is obvious as well, as they get financial support and they get an ally to help distribute their software pre-installed on various devices. Now let's move on to some hardware news. The Framework laptop has started shipping in batches, and it seems that it's a popular device to run Linux on. This laptop is designed for repairability, upgradability, and you can virtually swap any of the ports with any other type of port on the go. It's a great device that I'd love to be able to review, especially as they decided to pick components that are compatible with Linux to build these laptops. Basically, all of the hardware should work out of the box, including the fingerprint reader, provided you use a relatively recent Linux kernel. Distros based on Ubuntu 20.04 will have a harder time running on the Framework laptop, and Fedora 34 has issues with the Wi-Fi card. But the Linux community has rallied and posted instructions to help getting your favorite distro running on the Framework laptop. Let's hope I can get my hands on one soon. Valve spoke a little bit more about the Steam Deck to clarify the situation on supporting the whole Steam library. As expected, they are deflating expectations a bit, saying that they do intend the Steam Deck to be able to run all Steam games hardware-wise, but that Proton might not bring 100% game compatibility. Even though they're working to implement anti-cheat systems like Easy Anti-Cheat or BattleEye, there are other things that prevent games to run with Proton, such as older DRMs, certain launchers, or some video formats, even though these are less and less of an issue these days. I think that Valve needs to try and be more precise in how they communicate about the Steam Deck and its capabilities. If people go in expecting 100% compatibility and figure out that it's not the case, then Linux as a whole might be blamed for it, which wouldn't be ideal. Now let's move on to apps. The Heroic Games launcher got a new release that's considered essential for its users. While it doesn't bring new features in, it comes with a new version of Legendary, the command line tool it uses to log into the Epic Games Store and fetch your games, your saves, and everything you need to make it work. This new version of Legendary fixes issues related to the latest update of Epic's API, including the inability to log in. Heroic also fixes the context menu not working and the placement of the update icon on games that need to be updated. If you use Heroic, you should upgrade to ensure everything works. If not, and you do have some Epic games, then you should definitely take a look at Heroic. It's amazing. Firefox 92 was also released. It's a pretty minor update with more ways to upgrade the connection to HTTPS and support for full range color levels for video playback. It also brings the rest of the browser in line with their Proton redesign, notably the bookmarks toolbar and the overflow menu, when your unwanted toolbar icons live. They have a cleaner certificate error page, but they didn't manage to add AVIF support, even though it was planned. AVIF is an image format that weighs less than JPEG, looks better, and is royalty-free, and which could fast become the norm on the web to ensure that data usage is kept to a minimum, even with image-heavy sites. Work is also ongoing to refactor Firefox's JavaScript memory management, so it can be faster and use less RAM. Now in terms of gaming, there's only the release of Wine 6.17. This one converted the Wine config or Wine CFG program to the PE format. They added better support for high DPI for the built-in Wine applications, including the aforementioned Wine CFG, and work on the GDI syscall interface has been continued. This time, the Wine team only lists 12 bug fixes, which seem to be more generic than focused on specific applications. And let's conclude this video by some privacy news. Firefox is trying to expand their revenue sources, and this includes their VPN, which was audited and found pretty vulnerable by an independent company called Cure53. Mozilla announced that the vulnerabilities listed in this audit are now fixed. There were 2 medium-level threats and 1 issue of high severity, which you can all find in Mozilla's Public Security Audit Report. I like seeing companies being relatively public regarding these things. If your product is found to be vulnerable, it's much better to communicate that to people and inform them that it's fixed, than to try to black box the issue and wait for people to find out when they see their data floating online. ProtonMail, which bases a lot of their marketing on privacy, got under fire for complying with Swiss law and logging the IP address of an environmental activist. People were rightfully outraged as the service claims not to collect any IP address from their users. Turns out that's true after all, as they only start collecting this data after they've received a request from Swiss law enforcement agencies in case of suspected criminal activity. Andy Yan, the CEO of ProtonMail, answered the concerns on Twitter, saying that it's unfortunate that governments use these laws to force companies to give information, but that they do have to comply with the regulations where the company is located. Thankfully, the email contents being encrypted, they can't give these away, even if they were asked to. And while they mentioned in their privacy policy that they do collect these IP addresses in case Swiss law enforcement requests it, it's still weird to have that marketing based on we don't collect anything when they clearly can do in some cases. All in all, it's a good reminder that nothing is really 100% private when law enforcement is concerned. And this concludes this video. It was made possible by Slimbook. If you don't know about them, they're based in Valencia, Spain. They make Linux laptops, desktop for any budget, any type of use case. I only use their stuff nowadays. I left a link in the description below if you want to check out their stuff. So thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't hesitate to like and subscribe and turn on those notifications. And if you didn't like the video, you can also dislike it and tell me why in the comments. If you don't like YouTube, you can also watch all my videos on Odyssey, and if you want to help support the channel, you can join my amazing Patreon subscribers and YouTube members, and you'll get access to a weekly Patreon cast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!